What if the way you've been telling your life story reveals the secret to what is holding you back? Stories play an integral part in how we see not only ourselves, but the whole world. Stories are more than just an important part of communication. They also reveal hidden aspects of our inner talk, which can either support us or end up holding us back from the very things we want most in life, without us even realizing it. Join author, mindset coach, and award-winning singer-songwriter Carrie Rowan on her show, Look for the Good, every Monday at 5 a.m. and 5 p.m. when she shares nuggets of wisdom from her internationally best-selling book, Tell a New Story, 5 Simple Steps to Release Your Negative Stories and Bring Joy to Your Life. Carrie's powerful stories and compelling guests will empower you to change how you look at your own life while giving you some powerful tools and tips you can use every day to help you feel better and move yourself closer to the life you've been longing to live.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Look for the Good. I'm your host, Carrie Rowan, mindset strategist, coach, and speaker, and I love sharing nuggets of wisdom about the stories that we tell each other, but more importantly, those stories that we tell ourselves. You can join me and my special guests as we share our personal stories of strength and triumph every week here on Dream Vision 7 Radio Network. You can listen online on your mobile device, in your car, or ask Alexa to play Dream Vision 7 Radio. And tune in every Monday at 5 a.m. and 5 p.m. Eastern to get real stories and tips on how to turn your story and your life around and evolve with us as we unite humankind with universal love. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Look for the Good. Super excited. We have Michelle Fuller waiting in the wings. Hello, Michelle.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on. And you guys know I love talking about stories, right? Those stories that we have inside of our heads. And sometimes those stories we don't even realize are driving our lives, right? A lot of times we have these stories we don't even realize they're sort of like our limiting beliefs, right? It's all there's so much hidden into our stories. Our stories are like this little microcosm of our life, right? They contain the good, the bad, and the ugly. But we don't even realize half the time that these stories can be the driver of our life, right? And the sad thing about that is some of these stories, those really old ones that hang out, those mean ones that we tell ourselves up in our head, especially when we're in like fight or flight and stress, those are the ones that were made up and created. Of course, our brain always trying to keep us safe, right? So I love to just normalize that we all do this. And they were created a lot of times before we were even 7 years old, right? So think about that for a minute. Would you let a 7-year-old drive the car? I wouldn't. I'd be scared. So we let this 7-year-old stories really drive our life. So that's why I love so much about this show is really to bring people on, talk about those stories, the good, the bad, the ugly, because we like to focus on the ones that are holding us back because we know that we can change those and turn those stories around. And we all have a really powerful turnaround story, a comeback story. But we forget sometimes that there's a lot of really good stories, right? We had some mentors in our lives. We had leaders. We have people that we look up to that say one or two things to us, even before we're 7, right? It can be one of those stories. And it gets embedded in our brains, a story of strength, like, wow, you're really good at that. Or, wow, you're a good writer. Don't stop doing that. You could be really great at fill in the blank, right? So don't forget those stories too as we start to unwind and unravel some of those other stories that hold us back from taking those brave, courageous steps in our lives. There's also those good stories that help pull us up by the bootstraps and remind us of who we really are, right? Inside, deeply in those stories. So you guys can see that's why I'm super jazzed and passionate about stories. And I can't wait to dive into your stories, Michelle.
I'm excited to share them.
So let me do you mind if I read your bio?
Please.
So I'm going to read Michelle's, but it's really, there's a way more things that she's done in here, but she's very modest. And you can always find her LinkedIn page and look at all her stuff. So, Michelle is a wife, a mom of 3, and a sales and marketing professional with over 20 years of experience in financial services. She recently left corporate America to pursue working as a consultant for her family's automotive repair business here in Central Mass, where she concentrates on accelerating growth through strategic planning and implementing innovative strategies to drive business development, operational efficiencies, and competitive advantages. Wow, I love that. Super cool. You've totally reinvented yourself like over the last few years. Right? And I want to hear that story. You and I both have that story of the leaping off story. And I've actually written articles on it. You probably have too, because people want to know more about it. They're like, wait, what? You left your 9 to 5 job? How did you do that? Like, I used to have people ask me if I was a little bit crazy, like, what, why would you do that? I jumped off and went into the music business. So they had a right to ask me why I did that. But let's talk about your story. Tell us the leaping off story. What inspired that? And what gave you the strength and the bravery to do that?
Well, Carrie, and thank you again for having me. I really appreciate it. It definitely takes a lot of strength. It takes an inner look and an identification of your true needs and wants as you continue to live your life. And so for me, I I knew I needed to take a leap, and it was years in the making. It was not a decision that was taken lightly at all. I think so often we get so ingratiated in our careers that they almost become our identity.
Mm,
And that can be a good thing. It can also be a frightening thing. And
absolutely.
so for me, really kind of digging deep and saying, okay, um, do I keep on keeping on? Or and I've shared a book that I'm reading by Annie Duke called I believe the name is Ready to Quit or Timing the Quit or something like that. But um it's knowing when to hang on, but then also knowing when to make that severance, if you will, that severing ties. And so I had my 3 children, and I had continued to work, and it was very difficult at times because juggling the many demands of an executive job with the demands of your children is an art, not
Yeah,
a
it is.
science,
It's an
and it
art.
takes a lot. And I know there's probably many women out there that are doing that as well. But for me, the timing just kind of worked out. I had received a new designation through my role in corporate, and it had really opened my eyes to the opportunities within our family business and the opportunities for me to take this leap and move on from everything I had ever known and kind of brave the unknown. And so and I was guilty, very guilty of that self-identification of, well, I'm a corporate executive, and I'm a girl boss, and there's so many women and men, that look up to me. How can I possibly go do something different where this is what I pride myself on, in addition to being a mother and a wife? Um, but it was, the timing was right, and I kind of just took that, like, I don't want to say blind leap, but I said, if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. And so I didn't want, in addition to that, I didn't want to look back with regret. I didn't want to look back, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, and say, gosh, I always wanted to do that and I didn't do it. And I wish I had. Because I feel that regret is one of the toughest feelings to overcome. It's tough to synthesize within ourselves, but it's also just I just have a lot of trouble with regret. So um I made the decision, and it was a surprising one to many of the people that I work with. But once they kind of heard my side of the story and sort of the specifics around it, they they obviously respected it and they supported it, and here I am. So
Oh, wow. You said so many good things in there. That's why I was taking notes. You dropped a lot of really great truth bombs in there. Um, and, regret, I'm going to tackle that one because that's a biggie. It is one of the yuckiest emotions, right? It's like way down on that emotional scale, if you will. Um, and I think we talked a little bit about this thing that I do with my clients called the rocking chair test to make sure that we don't have that regret. And that's where you imagine yourself when you're like 90, you're sitting in your happy place on a beautiful, I don't know, I picture a beautiful porch with a glass of lemonade or something with your special person, whoever that is. and it could be a furry one if you'd like. And you're just thinking back on your life, right? Because the studies show that people on their dying beds, they don't talk about what they did. They talk about that one little thing they did and did do, just like you said. Oh, I always wanted to do fill in the blank. Oh, I wish I had. Oh, so that's the biggest regret that they found when they did all those studies. And I love that you said that. It makes me think about a Tony Robbins quote that discipline weighs ounces, regret weighs a ton.
Love that. Love that. It's so true.
Yeah. And so you embrace that. Like you were able to see through that. Like that's not a usual thing where we can stop for a second, especially in the middle of a successful career where you're the girl boss and you've got all these people that report to you. I get that. It's hard to be reflective because we're so going like a motor. We're just go, 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 especially then coming home as a mom, right? You're trying to balance it all. How did you get that clear vision? Where did it come from? What inspired that for you to say, you know what? I got to do it now.
I mean, I think there's been a number of different kind of life situations that all kind of roll up under that decision. And really quickly, just a little side note, I was able to find the name of that book in case any of our listeners would like to get a copy of it. It's called Quit: Power of Knowing When to Walk Away by Annie
Oh,
Duke. So just wanted to put that plug in there. Great book.
I love that.
Um,
It made me think of Annie, get your guns out.
and I have to tell you, one of my LinkedIn posts, I used this concept, not to digress, but just for a second, about you playing cards. And I learned to play cards at a young age, and I still love to play blackjack and craps and whatever else. But this concept can be used in a number of different ways, and especially when you're sitting down at the table, and it's like, okay, I know when to walk away. So I
Yes, I
digress.
love that. But I like that story. That's a good story.
So, yeah, with regret, I think, again, there's a lot of different pieces to this. So, one of the pieces to it was space. So I was working with a business coach. She's phenomenal, and we talked a lot about clarity coming when you give yourself space.
Mm,
And we talked about, okay, what are the pros and cons of taking this time for yourself to create that space and create that clarity? And a lot of times it's just a matter of getting that list out and putting it down on paper. So many of my friends and I talk about this, and you have it all in your head of like the pros and cons, but when you really sit down and you put it down on paper, that's when a lot of times, this exercise will help with the clarity that you need to make decisions. So, again, we talked ahead of the decision, we talked about the pluses and minuses, the pros and cons, getting it down on paper, the benefit of this space and the clarity time. So there was that piece. I lost my mother to cancer at a fairly early age. She was 60, and
mm,
so again, we had many wonderful years, but she battled cancer for 10 years, off and on, which was so difficult to watch. And I think when you experience that, and you experience the loss of a parent, it's a very monumental point in your life, and you really, through the process, gain wisdom, whether you like it or not, about just how precious life is.
mm.
And so I had seen her kind of, and I think everybody does, right, towards the end, gosh, I wish I did this, or I wish I did that. And seeing that when I was 40, also at a pivotal point in my life, midlife, if you will, say, gosh, I don't ever want to be in that situation. I don't want to be in a situation where I'm nearing the end and I have regrets. So that was obviously, a monumental point. And then I think, when you have kids, kids are there. I mean, there's so many facets of having children, right? And that could be a whole other probably 3 or 4 episodes. But when you have children, and one of my little guys had a really rough beginning when he was first born, and I kind of just at first was like, oh my gosh, like, how am I going to get through this? How am I going to continue to have a career? How am I going to continue to be who I am
Mm.
while being a mom with a whole bunch of other dynamics at play because of the situation? There was always that air and that mindset that I had of, you know what? I'm going to do whatever it takes for him. I'm going to do whatever it takes for me because again, I don't want to look back with any regrets. I
Yeah.
don't want to look back and say, you know, that's it, throwing away my career, throwing away, whatever else, because I've got this on my plate and I can't possibly handle both. My mindset is, well, let me try
Mm.
and to handle everything. And if I can't, then I'll make the decision. But I'm not going to throw my hands up right away and try to do that
Yeah,
off that.
I love that. And it's like when life gives us that stuff, those things, those stories that we wish didn't happen. We all have those stories, right? And we can use them like you just said. They do bring us down to our knees. But they make us get that lens out, like it changes our lens, right? We put on this new lens like, whoa, this is really temporary, you know. And throughout my book I talk a lot about this because my dad, who died at 62, it's all these little quips that he used to say, and one of them was, um, tomorrow's not promised to anybody, right? And so all these things you start to remember, all those things your mom said and all those things, and it's a pivotal point for us in life where we have to be like, it just gives you a new way to look at life. And I love that comes out, something that comes out of something really negative and heart-wrenching and all that is that new perspective. And sometimes I think that's why that's there for us, so that we can be like, okay, hold on, am I doing what I want to do every day? Right? It's like,
1,000%. And it's that you can look at some of these moments, and when you're in the moment, it's of course it's trying and it's potentially problematic. And it's, gosh, how am I ever going to get through this? But when you look back, a lot of times you can almost see them as what I like to call God winks, because they're just a monumental point in your life where you're 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 pivoting potentially, you're learning new things, you're making lemonade out of lemons, and it's shaping who you become as you continue to move through life. So
I love that. Yeah. I mean, sometimes let's talk about, it gets so messy. Never mind lemons. I like to talk about it is life is throwing these oysters at you and they're like slimy and nasty, and you have to get inside and you got to really dig. You got to roll up your sleeves. You got to dig. You got to look for that pearl in there. And when you find that pearl, I talk about making something beautiful out of our broken things, right? Which is really what you've done here. And then even when you find that pearl, you got to polish it up, right? You got to polish that. And I think of like my songs and my music coming out of a lot of those things that happened that I wish didn't happen in my life, as a way to kind of heal myself through it. And that's exactly what you're doing. You're making something beautiful. You're stopping. You're saying, hey, I want to polish this up in my life and this over here. And I want to focus on this. And this was beautiful behind me. And now I'm going to take this big leap into the unknown, because somehow going through those experiences gives us the courage to do it, as crazy as that sounds.
agreed.
Yeah. And that's what we need. We need that courage to step into the unknown, because here's where those stories start popping in our head. Those little pre programmed negative ones. What do you do? And all the like imposter stories, right? You can't do that. Don't do that. What are you, crazy? All those little stories start coming up that somebody said to us a long time ago, which half the time aren't even really true. But it's when we go to step out of that comfort zone into doing the new thing that all those stories start popping up like with a magnifying glass on them, don't they?
No, 1,000%. As you were talking, you can see it clear as day. We were walking my son, my mother and I were walking my son in the stroller when he was very young. And I was nearing the end of my maternity leave. And she kept saying to me, gosh, I really wish you would stay home. I really wish you wouldn't go back to work. The best thing for this baby is you. There's no one that's going to take care of this baby every day the way you would. And she's 1,000% right.
Mm.
However, and I was just telling my husband this the other night, um, I I was there for my children as much as I possibly could be while juggling my job. looking back, I don't even know how I possibly did it because I found a way to be at music classes and play groups and uh, every doctor's appointment. And I mean, no one was going to take my child to the pediatrician besides me. And so I somehow made it work. And whether that was, waking up at 4 a.m. to get work done, or whether that was staying up late at night to kind of make up for that time during the day that I was away, I made it all happen. And this time I've spent away from corporate America has made me realize just how much I love the work. And I don't regret my decision one bit to juggle a career and children versus stay home. I know now, and it took me, my little guy's 12, or sorry, my oldest is 12. But it took me this time away and it took me this reflectionary period for me to say, because I used to constantly beat myself up. I should have stayed home. Would these kids be different if I stayed home? Would this be better? Would that be better if I had made the decision to stay home? Right.
Yeah.
And so there's regret, keep, peeking in a little bit there. But I can honestly say, again, taking time away, taking the space brings clarity. And I can say wholeheartedly, I made the right decision for me. I feel a better mother having my job, but also having my role as a mother as well. I think just the way I'm wired and the way I operate, I needed the intellectual stimulation of a high powered, fast moving job to be in my life all the time. And so, I think, you hear your parent or you remember these stories or whatever else. And, of course it's your mother, right? So when she was making when she was bringing her commentary to me, of course, like, gosh, maybe she's right. Maybe I should stay home. Maybe I'm not making the right decision. What am I doing? And trust me, there was times along the way when, the nanny calls out or, the babysitter center closes early and you're rushing to get the kids and there's a million things you're juggling and this would be so much easier if I just stayed home.
Yeah.
A million and one times I said that, but looking back, I am so happy I made the decision I did. And again, it just took that time away to bring that clarity.
Yeah, the space. I love that. And don't go anywhere. I know you guys are hanging on Michelle's every word here, but we'll be right back after a message from a sponsor. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Look for the Good. We're having an amazing conversation here with Michelle, and I love that you shared all that. Your vulnerability is a beautiful thing, and it's so different. Like there's no rule for anybody, right? It's like that's why you need to go in there and find that space. And I love one thing that you really talked about as far as knowing yourself, right? It's one of the things in my chapter 1 of my book, Know Thyself, right? Because you have to know who you are because that guilt can overtake you. That mom guilt is so big and so strong. We have so many stories in there about being the good mom and whatever that means. So understanding yourself, and I love that you really knew yourself. You said, nope, I need that intellectual stimulation. I'm better here. And now you can go into that without the guilt, right? And forget those stories just started when you decide so strongly and with such great emotion, those negative stories fall away. Do you ever notice that? Like that voice starts to calm and quiet. It's when we're in that moment of indecision and we're letting other people influence the decision we're making, that the voices get louder. But when we can take that space like you did, like that amazing coach, little pump up for coaches there, helped you discover that, right? That's what we do. And creating that space in your life, I don't care what you're doing, quieting yourself from that outside noise because it is so strong and it so pulls us to look outside of ourselves when we have all the answers right here inside of us. And only we know what's right, right? Like I love the story about your mom. You could talk to a friend at work who says, no, you have to come back. This is what you're made to do, right? You can get everybody's opinion and serve everybody, but really it's taking that time to be quiet, finding the space within ourselves because that is where the answers lie. I don't care what the question is, right?
Agreed. I
So,
think, the instinct, you have to trust your instincts. And when you learn to listen to your instincts, the more you listen to them, the more you can trust them. The more you trust them, the more confident you become in your decisions.
amen. Beautifully said. So true. Because people think like, where does that, you're born with confidence. No, confidence is actually trusting yourself, right? Trusting yourself when you say you're going to do something, do it, right? If I say I'm going to be down here in my office every day at 7:30, show up for yourself. There's nobody else here making me come down here. You got to show up for yourself, right? And the more you start showing up for yourself, like you just described it so beautifully, that's where the confidence comes from, right? It's really,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's that simple. And you can build that within yourself by learning to trust yourself and giving yourself the space so that you can hear that voice or the God wink that you mentioned. I love that phrase, the little God winks that come in. But if we're so noisy up here and our life is just what's pulling us, we can never hear that. And I feel like that's why a lot of people have trouble making decisions.
Agreed. Yep. Yep. And especially in this world where you have so many things coming at you in so many different mediums, text messages and videos and social media and I mean people and work and friends and I mean it's just it's coming at you in so many different directions. But if you're not having that inner stability and the inner confidence to make your own decisions and be comfortable with them, that's where you can potentially meet with some challenges. And
Yeah.
so one of the things we always try to teach our children is really just to um, you know, listen to their instincts, trust them. We've taught you well. Now it's
Mhm.
time to go and use those
Mhm.
in the world and try not to be influenced by as much as you have coming at you because there's a lot.
It's a different time to grow up. I talk about this a lot. These kids, this other generation, our kids, I can't even imagine. Like, I mean, they grew up with these like in their hands 24/7. You know what I mean? It's like so pulling for their attention, and all the studies that are out that show it's not a good place to put your attention, right? And it just that comparison thing comes in. So I love that. I say that to my girls all the time. Trust yourself. You know the answer, even more than I know the answer. I might think I know the answer, but only you can take that and you can be quiet with it and listen to your inner self. What feels right? I have one client that has this little phrase. I'm going to quote her. She says, if it feels light, it's right.
Love that. I
Right?
love that.
Isn't that cool? And it's so
Yes.
simple because when we're feeling heavy, and I'll say that to my girls, all right, well, imagine yourself like, what if you say no to that? What does that feel like? What if you say yes? Oh, that feels great and light. Or maybe it's relief. Do you feel relief if you say no? Well, then that's the right answer, right? And just kind of steering them. I even have to steer my own self back, coach my own self back, right? When we have these big decisions. But I love that. I think that's so important to be teaching that to our kids because nobody else really does know. So let's go
100%.
back to kids for a minute. You and I have this story. It's kind of a unusual story to have in common, right? About how hard it was to bring our firstborns into this world. And I know that that changed me as a human. It changed me as a person. It changed me as a mom. It changed the way I mother, right? And it also um, sort of put me in this fight or flight that I didn't even know I was in entering parenthood, right? Entering parenthood was more of a crisis for me when I first entered, unfortunately, for you as well. Um, but the beautiful thing I think that comes out of that, and I always talk about making something beautiful of your broken things, which is a quote that I got from Jewel, the singer, is to really reframing that story, right? Like, what is the strength in that, And now my daughter's in her 20s and she graduated from college recently.
Oh, that's so
And
wonderful. Love hearing that.
there is a whole chapter in my book dedicated to her because she is the biggest turnaround story that I know. So let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, I love that those stories that we think, and here's the thing that I like to share with people. Sometimes when you're in the middle of that story, that really icky, awful, you think it's the worst story of your life. And at the time it was for me, and I didn't really talk about it a lot. I was with a lot of different play groups with moms, like there was like 10 of us and we all traveled together and did play groups and stuff. And I couldn't talk about that story. I couldn't talk about it. It was too I was still in the process of healing the trauma that happened, right? Um, let's talk a little bit about that. Like, how did you turn that story around? You were so torn between, do I stay home? And again, that mom guilt voice coming in and all that. But you were able to work through that and stay there and really make it the best decision for your family. I love that. You had such clarity with that.
Oh, thank you, Carrie. Yeah, you put it perfectly. You're having your firstborn child, you're so excited about it, and it doesn't go the way that you think it's going to go, or
That
the
you
way you
planned.
expected it.
Exactly.
Exactly. Um, and so, unfortunately, it is, you know, more of a crisis situation than anything else. And um, you know, while we did have an emergency C-section situation and all of that, we kind of thought we were in the clear. And then, we had a situation happen during a routine surgery too. And so
Mhm.
the ending result was and I won't go into a ton of detail here, but the ending result was a hypoxic ischemic brain injury, which means there was loss of oxygen to the brain. And, to this day, we don't know exactly what caused it. We did, a lot of investigating at the hospital, investigative work with attorneys, and, kind of came, unfortunately, most of the information was inconclusive. And so it was kind of like, okay, well, you know what? Go home and, call early intervention and good luck. And that's kind of what the doctor said to us.
Wow.
So, there was a million and one things that could happen. He could
Right.
do this, he could do that, he could be this, he could be that. Um, we don't know. And all we can tell you is that children are resilient, and that's basically the only advice we have for you. And so I think, that is the key word there, resiliency. And
Yeah.
so we know that kids are so resilient. They do bounce back amazingly from so many different things. And so we need to learn from them in the same way. And so it's like I can either, continue to cry and kind of woe is me, or I can, pick up my big girl pants and get through this. And so, and I think it's important to have that time to feel. Anytime you go
Absolutely.
through a difficult situation, it's not just put your feelings aside and move on. It's take the time, feel the pain, acknowledge the pain, and then when you feel that you're ready to move on, that's when you do it. And so thankfully for me, and for my extremely supportive husband, we did the feeling, we went through the tough moments, and then it was like, okay, you know what, we're gonna roll up our sleeves and we're gonna handle this, and we are going to set this child up for success and for him to reach his potential, whatever that is. And so, we did call early intervention, and we did structure our schedules, right? Going back to corporate America.
Yeah.
Um, around that. And I remember, talking to my boss at the time about like, hey, is there any way that I could work from home on Fridays? Because that's when, I need to be home for this to see this therapy so I can repeat it throughout the week. And
Hmm.
the response was, well, gosh, Michelle, everybody wants a 3-day weekend. And I'm like, if you own like, what? Really? This is not a 3-day weekend for me. Like I'm, but like that was the mindset back then. It was,
Yes.
you've got to be in the office, and I was commuting an hour and a half, and,
Wow.
I just was like, gosh, like, I don't know, that was one of those questionable moments when I don't think my mother's right about this. But then the God wink happened, and, I had another company call and recruit me away to their firm for firm, much better compensation package, more flexibility. It was just, you put it out there and it comes.
Yeah.
And so, I moved on to that. But in working with my son, and trust me, there's still days, 12 years later, where I'm like, oh my gosh, how are we ever going to get through this? And I mean, it's not, we're definitely not in smooth sailing by any means. There's always challenges.
Hmm.
Um, but I look to him and the way he handles his challenges, and I get so inspired by
Yeah.
that because he is just the happiest, kindest, kind of march to the beat of your own drum, but like, I'm going to try my hardest every single day of my life to do what's in front of me. And he does
Mm.
it in the most happy-go-lucky way. And
It's
he's so
beautiful.
inspirational. for me. And so when I think that I'm having the toughest day or whatever else, I'm like, look at this kid. I mean, granted, he doesn't know any different than having to work 3 million times harder than everybody else, but he does it. And he does it with a smile on his face and positive outlook. And he's just so unbelievably inspiring. So,
Wow.
yes, what started in crisis is, and we have many crises all the time, right? I mean, they happen,
Yes.
but we just go back to that resiliency. We go back to that,
Yeah.
hey, you know what? It's in front of me, and I'm just going to trust in God and a higher power to help me through it, and to help him through it, and we'll find a way.
That
So
is beautiful. I love that you look to him for the right for this inspiration and like same. It's like they, if there's one word that I would use to describe my daughter is definitely resilient. I tell her that all the time. She is the most resilient kid I ever met. And man, when she gets her mind made up, she just goes after it, right? And it's like you can't teach somebody that. Just like your son, you cannot teach him to be happy go lucky and be able to just handle because they do. They have to work harder. They have to things don't come as quick to them. They have to work really hard. Um, and so again, as you're sometimes you're in the middle of that story. And I remember all those stages, middle school was really hard, and then high school, I'm like, oh, high school's going to be better. Oh, high school was hard too. College is going to be way better. Well, because she had all the foundation and all that work ethic that they pounded in their heads, she actually graduated college. This kid that they never really knew where to place her because she didn't need a whole lot of support, but she needed something. It's like the kid that falls through the cracks, right? But she was able to be her own best advocate, and understand what she needed. And, graduating, I said, you got to take that. I remember being at a graduation, be like, take this degree right here. And I want you to walk back into that high school and be like, you see
love
this?
it. And it's so funny because we had a setback or I don't want to say setback, but a challenge that came through actually last night. And we got some news that was a little bit difficult to swallow for my husband and I.
Hmm.
And I was thinking about it this morning, and I have, a million things swirling in my head. Well, what about this? And what about that? And, what if this was affecting this? And I have a best friend of mine who is my rock. She's basically my sister. And I went to her this morning with it, and I'm like, "You're never gonna believe what just happened," and blah 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 blah. And um, she said to me, she's like, "You know what? Like, I get it, digest it, but Andrew was never supposed to hold his own bottle, and look at him now."
Wow.
So sometimes you just need, and it was like just what I needed to hear
Yes.
to be like, you know what? You're right. There's so many things that he was not supposed to do
Hmm.
that he's doing now.
Hmm.
So, having those amazing people in your life to, pick you up when you need it or remind you of certain things also makes all the difference as well. And so it's recalling that, wait a second, you know what? Yes, we heard this devastating news, but like let's go back to the beginning to that,
Hmm.
these little,
Hmm.
resilience moments and
Yes.
say, yes, well, he got through that, so he's going to get through this too.
We're going to stop right here. I know people want to hear more because you're telling an incredible story. So do go anywhere. Anybody will be right back. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Look for the Good. This conversation is compelling. I know you couldn't wait for Michelle to get back on and talk about this story. I love that you called your rock, your bestie, right? You called her, and what she did for you was so beautiful because she reframed that conversation you were having in your head, the crisis conversation, right? All those voices came back up and they're like, oh God, what about this? What about that? We start thinking about the worst case scenario. And sometimes we need somebody outside of ourselves when we get stuck in that to say, hey, wait a second. She reframed that whole story. Remember when, remember back, because sometimes we do. We have to give ourselves that perspective because we're looking for this perfect situation that is, I don't even know what that means because it's unattainable. But I love what she did for you. She reframed that story and said, wait a second, remember when he couldn't even hold his bottle and all those things they said he couldn't do? Look at him now. and you can readjust, right? And you can take that news and half believe it and half not, because you know that you have more effect than anybody around him does because you're his mom and you share his cells, right?
No, absolutely. And it's, and I think we all have to kind of, we talked about a lot about, resiliency and picking up your big girl pants and, I'm going to do this. And I think, an important message for today and for always is you're going to have those moments when you fall back a little bit. You're going to have those vulnerable times when you need, someone to just, give you the little kick or give you the little pat on the back or the hug or whatever it is, to get you through. And it's okay.
Mm.
It's okay to lean a little bit, so that you can kind of get back on track. So, I certainly don't want our listeners to say, okay, well, the only way this is going to work is if I'm tough all the time and I'm looking ahead, and this is the only thing. There's going to be times for everybody where you just need that little something. And I hope that, and I wish for all that they also have a person to do that in their life the way I do.
I love that. Everybody needs a rock, right? Everybody needs somebody to, especially when it comes to those stories. We got to bounce them off somebody else, somebody who else who loves us and sees us differently when we're in that moment. Because let's face it, this stuff is going to hit the fan, people. It does, right? But what's your plan for it? That's what I always ask people. What are you going to do about it? Yeah, the stuff is going to hit the fan. But you talked a lot about creating that space. And if you have something, I love to have all of my clients come up with a morning routine, and it's non-negotiable. It's a little morning routine that you do. Maybe it's meditation, maybe it's just getting on your yoga mat, maybe it's writing, whatever it is for you. Again, it's customized for whatever people like to do. Maybe it's sitting with your tea or coffee and looking outside in the wilderness. So it's creating that space, because when you do something to create that space and you give yourself that time, that nurturing time to filter out whatever's in there, you've created that space. And now when stuff comes at you, because we know the stuff is going to hit the fan, you've got more space. You already thought about your stuff. You already know who you want to be. You already set your intention for the day. You have more to deal with. It creates that space between what happens and your reaction. Now you can choose to respond in a way that feels conscious. It's not just that knee jerk reaction that we do sometimes, right? We're all programmed to do. So I love that. And yes, your tip of everybody having somebody that can be that rock for them is so, so huge. It's a beautiful thing. I love that. Um, we talked a little bit about this before. Share with us one of the little mantras, one of the little things you say to yourself that helps you. If your rock is not available or somebody's not available, right? Like, what do you say to yourself that is like this strong mantra for yourself that helps you?
Oh gosh, I have so many of them.
That's a good thing.
So, which is a good thing.
Yes, different ones for each thing that happens.
Absolutely. I mean, I have ones that are more fitting for work. I have ones that are more fitting for life. Um, but one I feel like that has really rang true for me, and I actually mentioned it on a separate podcast I was on, a few months ago, and that is wherever you go, there you are. And life's going to take you in a lot of different directions. Some of them, many of them, a lot of times you don't even expect to be in. Uh, but, I think it's up to us to make the best of the situation you're in, because you can't a lot of times prepare for where life's going to take you. And so we talked a lot about that today with, with, our kiddos with rough beginnings, right? But it applies to just about everything. I mean, when I left corporate America, you know, um, I wanted to take the space, of course, but I found myself working very closely in our family business. And so it was, very much like, okay, wherever you go, there you are. Well, here I am. And I am going to teach myself everything I need to know about, you know, um, collision repair specifically, but leverage all of my experience, my sales and marketing background, my, corporate experience to apply this here and help as much as they possibly can. So there, wherever you go, there you are at
Mhm.
work. Wherever you go, there you are with home and school. And I moved high school in my junior year. Wherever you go, there you are. I'm going to
Wow.
make the best of the situation.
Hmm.
I'm going to meet as many friends as possible. I'm going to just own this. And so, we moved districts when in back in 2020. And so, we moved into our new home and COVID hit.
Oh
Right?
my
Wherever you
gosh.
go, there you are. Here we are at home. And our kids are not in the schools that we planned for them to be in because we're home. But let's embrace this. We're home all together. We're gonna
Mm.
do the homeschooling the best we can. And so it's just it's something that I like to remind myself of all the time because it applies to so many different facets within our life.
So true. So true. And when you can have something that you can fall back on, that like when nobody else is around and it's just you, you're like, oh, wait, here I am. Okay, we're going to be okay. Right. Um, I have one that I like to share. Mine is things are always working out for me. And boy, do I need that reminder, right? When I'm stuck in the middle of the stuff hitting the fan and I'm like, your mind just goes because I love to normalize that because we all do the same thing. Our brains are all wired the same. We might each have our little subtleties, but when it comes to like that fear response and fight or flight and all that, we are all wired the same. So when you go in that back brain, you're not thinking with this logical brain up here. Logic goes out the window, and we need to have a way to pull ourselves back, right? To get
Yeah,
ourselves back. And I have to remind myself, wait a second, aren't things always working out for you, Carrie? Yeah, I forgot about that. Good thing I have it right here over my desk because we need reminders. I don't care.
absolutely.
I've been doing this business this kind of work a really long time, and I need reminders. I've got little sticky notes right over here that you can't see, um, because we just have to have a way that reminds you. Maybe you have a little thing that you set up on your phone with your little personal mantra. So everybody listening today can think about what's your mantra? What's your little mantra going to be? What's going to be that little quip or that little thing? Tomorrow's not promised to anybody, or hey, I can get through this, or all things are possible. What is yours going to be? I'd love to hear from you. I know Michelle would love to hear from you too. So hit me up on social media. My links are all on the show notes. And tell us, what is your little mantra going to be? Maybe you're going to borrow Michelle's, right? You can feel free to borrow mine or come up with your own. Um, so I love that. I love that you have a personal mantra. Do your kids sort of, I mean, you're a very upbeat person, and I feel like our kids sort of follow suit. Like, they follow what we do, not what we say, right? Do you find them kind of picking up on some of the stuff that you say a lot?
Definitely my oldest. I have a boy, girl, boy, and I have 12, 11, and 7 are the
Wow.
ages. And so, yeah, I think my oldest for sure. My middle one is a typical middle child and also in that like tween spot.
Yes.
So, I think there's some of that coming into play, but typically was always kind of just, yeah, can do attitude and let's, smile versus frown.
Love it.
Um, and then, think my 7-year-old is still very impressionable. And
He's so
so
young still.
exactly, so young still. So I think, you know, I'd like to hope that he would follow suit as well. But, I have behind me, which you commented on is another mantra of mine, and that's work hard and dream big. And so, that's something that we try to instill in all of our children, not only obviously the happiness piece, the resiliency piece, but also, you know, you got to work hard.
Yeah.
It's not gonna fall in your lap, but you dream big. Think bigger. And don't be afraid to put something out in the universe that you think may be difficult to attain, or a pipe dream, or a goal that maybe seems completely unattainable. It's if you put it out there and you work towards it, it can be a reality.
Absolutely. And you are living proof, my friend, right? After leaving your established career. And so many people want to do that and they just really never muster the courage. So I love everything you said today. And, the big takeaway is not to live with regrets, not to have any. And the way you do that is stopping for a moment. Imagine yourself in that rocking chair And really, like Michelle said, creating that space in your life to give yourself that time to be introspective, because we're so pulled away by this externally faced world, and to really just go inside and listen to that voice, because you have the answer. You have the answer. And I love that. Work hard, dream big, everybody. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been wonderful having you.
Carrie, thank you so much for having me as well. This has been such a fantastic experience, and I truly appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. And if they want to get in touch with you or find out more about you, where would they do that?
So I do have a website. It's getgrowthaccelerated.com. So you can check
Awesome.
me out there, learn more about me, and then you have the opportunity to either connect directly with me through that site or LinkedIn as well. So that would probably be the best way.
Awesome. So they already know I'm on LinkedIn. So just find me, and Michelle and I are friends on LinkedIn. So you can find her there and reach out. And again, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a really incredible conversation. And remember, everybody, if you want to get the behind the scenes scoop, sign up for my newsletter at carrierowan.com. Click on podcast. You can get all the past episodes there. And you can hear Michelle. Hers will be there too. And find us on YouTube as well. So remember, everybody, it is never too late to live your best story. Be well.
Thanks for tuning in to Look for the Good with your host, Carrie Rowan, best-selling author and mindset coach. Join us every Monday at 5 a.m. and 5 p.m. right here at Dream Vision 7 Radio Network. If you weren't able to catch an episode, no worries. Just visit our website to find all the archived episodes of Look for the Good on demand, so you don't miss a thing. And remember, it's never too late to live your best story. For additional resources or to find out about how you can work with Carrie directly, visit carrierowan.com for more details.